And welcome back to another exciting lecture in English 358. I am your host, Sensei Albright. Uh, it's good to be back. A few housekeeping things before we get started. Um, this is lecture 3, so welcome if you've made it this far or if you're just getting started. So emails were good in general. If you got a 9 out of 10, that means you earned 9 points out of the 10 that were available. If you got a 10 out of 10, that means you earned 10 points out of the 10 that are available. I don't want anybody to come away with the impression that they start with 100% and they begin losing points for things they do wrong, because wrong is really a matter of nuance. So if you earned 9 points, that means you did 9 things really well. If you earned 10 points, that means you did 10 things really well. Not that anything was wrong necessarily with the email. So if you got the email to me past Friday and you haven't received a grade yet, that means I'm still working on it. Those of you who got me your email by Friday, you should have a grade. If you do not, or if it's 0, please let me know and I will change that. A few of you have commented that there aren't any assignment sheets, and that is by design. Your assignments are really up to you to find a way to complete, right? So I don't want to give you a strict guideline to adhere to because I want you to make a choice, right? Figure out a way to do the assignment. And if the assignment is in need of some feedback when you're done, I will give you that feedback and you can revise it for your portfolio. No grade is final till the end of the semester, so we can have a conversation about what's going on in your writing and see where you want to go from there. So I want you to take those chances. I want you to figure out how to do things on your own. And if you have specific questions, please let me know, and I can answer those as I'm available. But that's why we don't have assignment sheets. We also don't have tests because, again, tests test a specific thing that's not really a part of the writing process necessarily. So I don't give tests because test your ability to take tests and not necessarily your ability to write. That's why I want you to write. Yeah. As far as getting your assignments to me, make sure you just email everything to me. If something isn't being turned in by email, I will let you know, but you can assume that everything will be turned in by email. Please keep everything. Keep a copy on your computer or on your cloud service or however you store your files, because those will be used in the portfolio at the conclusion of class. All right. I'm going to start today with the writing prompts because these sort of set the stage for what we're talking about today. So I have 3 actually, but they're all sort of related to the same topic. So here are your writing prompts for this week. I want you to tell me, what is your ideal career? This can be in your field, but it doesn't have to be. Then what are the qualifications necessary to have that career? This can even be, astronaut or actor or whatever. Just make sure that you do the research necessary to find out what the qualifications are that are necessary to do that career. And then I want you to follow those 2 questions up with what you're doing to get there, what you're doing to attain those qualifications that are necessary for the career that you want. Because in the end, right, that's what you should all be going for, is the career that you want. Yeah? If you're not interested in pursuing the career that you want, I don't know why you're here in the first place. Yeah? So those are the 3 questions, and I will repeat them at the end of the video. Now, I've got the syllabus here, right? And you can see we're on lecture 3. This is week 3 of the semester. I hope you had an enjoyable 3-day weekend. And you'll see that nothing is specifically due in terms of the major assignments, but I do want those writing prompts by Friday at 11:59 p.m. if you can get those to me. But we do have the scannable resume due next week, and so that's what we're going to talk about. I do want to draw your attention to the course content section. You'll see it right here. I do have a professional email guide that you all read for the professional email. There's also a resume and cover letter. Now, this resume and cover letter are one way of solving the problem. That's one way that one student solved the problem of this assignment. But it's not necessarily the right way, and I want to encourage you to innovate as you go about the assignment. All right, so let's look at the scannable resumes requirements here real quick. So the scannable resume is a document that considers the primary method by which your resume will be viewed by employment screeners. It asks you to design a resume that will be viewed primarily by a machine screening your application to online employment sites. So I want to show you something real quick. We're going to go to YouTube to look at it. This is an ad by Indeed. And this is about the shortlist. So we're going to play this real quick.
Running a business means I can't waste time, especially when I'm hiring. I used to pore over CVs, but now I post my jobs on Indeed. Their screener questions help me get to my shortlist. People with the qualifications I need, like 5 years experience, saving me time that I get to put back into running my business. Hiring's better when you've got your shortlist. Learn how screener questions can save you time when you post your job on Indeed.
All right, so they're talking there about screener questions. What do you suppose these screener questions are? Well, they're a filter. They're a filter where when you submit your resume on Indeed to a job, that employer can pay to have Indeed screen your resume before you ever are seen by a person. Now, what that effectively does is makes it so your first audience for your resume is actually not a person, but a machine, right? Your first audience for your resume should be for the scanner that scans your resume for the questions and qualifications that they require in the job ad. Now, this complicates things in a number of ways. Primarily, it means that if you do not list somewhere on your resume that you possess the minimum qualifications of a job to which you're applying, then that job will probably screen you out before you were ever seen by a HR professional, which means they are losing out on some candidates who don't write their resume with this in mind. So somewhere on your resume, you should quote the required minimum requirements for that job so that they make sure and don't screen you out. I have a personal anecdote for this. I was applying to work in a copy shop after I got my master's degree. And the screener screened me out because I did not list that I had copier experience when I was applying for the job. Now, as a graduate student, I had run a copier quite often, right? I probably could have rebuilt the copier, but that's not on my resume because I assume that a person, right, looking at that would say, oh, he's a graduate student. He knows how to work with copiers, right? Nope. My resume was screened out. I did not get the job. And when I called to ask to be put back on, interviews were already underway and they'd selected another candidate. So if you want to be part of this shortlist that Indeed advertises and indeed employers pay to receive, right, then it pays to put at least the minimum qualifications for the job quoted on your resume so that you do not get screened out. Another thing you might note is that non-standard keyboard keys are not always well read by these scanners. For example, the dash or the tilde or lines that sometimes appear on your resume, right? These are elements that make it difficult for the machine to read. So when you're putting your resume together, make sure and eliminate things like lines, like bullet points, like non-standard characters from the keyboard, right? Because the scanner may not know what these are. Another thing you need to consider is the font that you use. For example, if I bring up Microsoft Word here, I have my choice of fonts. Calibri is a sans serif font, right? And because it's a sans serif font, the machine has to tell the difference, let me zoom in here for you, between these two characters. One of those is an I, and one of those is an L. Can you tell me which one is which? I'm not sure I know. So rather than using a sans serif font, like Calibri, you might switch to a serifed font, like Times New Roman, for example. Scroll down to it. Now I can tell the difference between the I and the L, right? It's a lot more clear. And even the 1, yeah? It's clearer. I can tell the difference there. So when you are creating your resume, especially a scannable resume, you want to make sure that you're using a serifed font, a font that has the little lines on the edges that seem to be more fancy, but really help to distinguish one of those letters from the other, and other characters as well. This will help the scanner read your resume and make fewer errors, which makes it easier when the employer who is getting your resume tries to read it, right? The machine hasn't made so many errors. They get a short list with accurate depiction of your qualifications. Yeah? So those are just a few examples of the things that you can do. If we look at Joe Snuffy's resume in the content section, right, you'll see that Joe Snuffy has started to do some of this, right? He does not have a line here between the header and his experience. He has used different weights of text, right? So this is a bold text, whereas this is a narrow text, yes? He has used serifed fonts, so you can tell the difference between his I's, for example, and his L's, right? So there's the L here and the I here, right? He's laid it out in such a way that highlights his strengths. Generally, most of you are going to be higher strength on your education than you are on your work experience, so it's good to lead with that. You should lead with your strength. If you are a non-traditional student and you've got more work experience than you have education, especially if your work experience is relevant to the job to which you're applying, be sure and include the work experience first. Lead with your best thing, right? And then he's concluded with professional skills, right? Proficient in MS Office Suite, develop presentations in Toastmasters, strong ability to multitask in chaotic environments, right? These are probably specific quotes from the job ad. Must be proficient in MS Office Suite. Must be proficient in developing presentations. Must have the ability to multitask, often in chaotic environments, something like that. You can quote those bits of the job ad in order to draw the best results in the scanner, right? You do also want it to be pretty when you get it to human eyes finally, but 9/10 of the battle, right, is getting through the million resumes that they have received for this one job. Yeah? So if you can get past the scanner, chances are you've got a great opportunity to at least get an interview. Yeah? So, and in fact, you'll see in some of those Indeed ads when they talk about the short list, they have people come in for an interview right away if they're on the short list, right? So that's how employers are meant to use that service. And if we consider that our first audience for the scannable resume is in fact the scanner, right? Then it opens up new possibilities for us. So I'm gonna continue talking about this next week when we're also talking about chapter 2 of the Kagan book. I do want to make note, if you haven't received your Kagan book yet, and you would like to read that first chapter in order to catch up, you can go to Amazon.com, right? And we look at links are moving places. Kagan, Three Cultures, right? Click on this and look inside, and you will find a complete preview of the entire first chapter, right? So you can get up to date with the reading until next week when you will need a copy of the book. The other thing you can do is instantaneously buy the Kindle version, right? Or rent it. See there? So it's pretty cheap. It's a lot cheaper than most textbooks. That's why I don't mind asking you to buy it. Please get a hold of it as soon as you can. It is important. Some of you commented that it was dense. Yes, it is dense. It's hard. You're welcome to college, right? It's hard reading. You'll have to focus. Yeah. But it is reading that's valuable because it teaches you what your field wants. Yeah. And if you don't know what your field wants, you should really pay attention to it, right? Because it gives you a comparison of what your field does compared to what other fields do and how people feel about that. So it's a really important read. If you think about how Kagan is writing, he writes with a lot of examples. He will give a point, and then he'll give 4 or 5 examples of what he's talking about. So if you think of it like that, it makes a little more sense. He tells a lot of stories to get to the same answer, right? So please do catch up with the reading. Make sure you're doing that every week so that you get the most out of talking about the reading in the limited discussion that I do online. I will do limited discussion only of it online because it's something that you have the responsibility to do on your own time, and I don't want to summarize the whole chapter for you because what's the point of reading it then, right? And if I summarize it for you, you're also only getting what I think is important, and really what you think is important is just as important as what I think is important, especially because we're not taking quizzes on the book, right? So please do read that. It will be important for the class, and it will help your writing because you will understand the goals of writing in your field. So please do that. So once again, for this week, there is no major assignment. Your writing prompts for your composition book journal are: what is your ideal career? What are the qualifications necessary for that career that make you an ideal candidate, really? So if you're an actor, yes, you can get by with no qualifications, but what would really make you a shoo-in for that role that you want? Yeah. And then what are you doing to get there? I still have yet to see what I would consider 20 minutes worth of writing on each of these questions. So I do want you to make the effort to write as much as possible with these questions. It really will help. the more you can get used to writing sprints, to writing a lot in one sitting, the better off you will be because it can get from here onto your screen. Yeah? And that's where you want it because you can't do anything with it when it's up here, right? You can only manipulate it when it's right there. Yeah? So please do work on expanding the amount that you write. Write for a full 20 minutes on each question because it's really helpful for your writing and it's an opportunity for you to get out writing with very little pressure, right? I do not grade the content of these writing prompts. I grade whether or not you've done them, right? So if you do them, you get credit for them, right? And I'm not going to police and say, oh, well, you only wrote a page for this one, so you're not going to get credit for it. No, I'm not going to do that. I trust you. You're adults. I want you to take from this class whatever you can, but you only get out what you put in. Yeah? So put in the effort, you will get something out. You may say, Sensei Albright, you're supposed to give me everything, but that's not how it goes. Yeah? I'm supposed to give you the opportunity to learn. You're supposed to take that opportunity and learn, right? But that's largely on you. It's self-directed. That's why you're taking things online. It's self-directed, right? So let me know if you have any questions. Please feel free to email me. I am a pretty affable guy. Yeah. Uh, and I'll see you next week. Oops, wrong one.